Hello, and welcome to the Solarpunk Scene. The Solarpunk Scene is a project that is dedicated to bringing you the latest in solarpunk and sustainability news. My name is Lindsay, and I'm here to present you today with an interview that I did with Victor of CloseKnit. CloseKnit is a neighborhood community building app to go and help create connections within your neighborhood. Please enjoy. Hi, Victor. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm
Hi,
excited to go and
Lindsay.
hear about CloseKnit. Um, for those who haven't heard of it, how would you summarize CloseKnit?
Uh, okay, so CloseKnit is a human-centered and ethical app for connecting neighborhoods and transforming them into networks of trust, sharing, mutual aid, and resilience. On CloseKnit, you will only interact with your closest neighbors, so not someone from, let's say, 2 kilometers away. You never have actually seen. It will have native features for mutual aid, for asking for help. It will have native features for sharing items, for organizing local events, and for combining shopping lists for trips, for example, to Costco or whatever wholesaler or farm that you might want to go to. And above that, it will do everything without monetizing your data, without monetizing your behavior, without monetizing your attention. It won't create a market around you where you're the product. Instead, the user would be the actual customer of CloseKnit.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like that would be really useful, especially with how how most communities that I've seen around major cities, everyone tends to be so disconnected from their neighbors. I mean, you don't necessarily even say hi to the person coming down the hallway if you live in an apartment.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, like I've lived in big apartment complexes for a few years of my life, and it's an issue there. But it's not only an issue there, right? It's an issue in different neighborhoods, especially when people are coming and going, or rather not staying for very long, and you don't have that continuity and kind of that you know getting used to the people that you see all the time.
Exactly. Um, so what was the inspiration for CloseKnit for you? What went and spurred this?
Okay, so I used to ever since I remember myself, I like creating, I like inventing, and I think it comes from my grandpa, who's an inventor and mechanical engineer. We would sit for hours and talk about, when I was like little, talk about how things worked and why they worked a certain way. And this carried over to when I started studying software. It was one of the things that I actually really liked about it, that I can go ahead and create a world of of my own imagination. But as to CloseKnit, the thing that really got me thinking in the direction is when I learned about the happening climate crisis, or the climate crisis that is happening right now and starting to accelerate. It was around the time that the IPCC SR15 report was released. I read it, and I had like a 3-year-old kid. I had one on the way, and I was like, wow, like what kind of future are they going to have now? Because for the past several generations, it's been dogma that the next generation will always have it better than the previous one. All you have to do is just work hard and give your kids like a better start, like a better place to live. Like, for example, my parents went through two immigrations, so that me and my little sister will have a better place to live, and they worked really hard to give us a better start at life, and I'm really, really grateful to them for that. But seeing as like global tendencies actually happening, I no longer can say that I can do the same with that degree of confidence. And this kind of, this really got me started thinking, how can I, how can I creatively use my my expertise, my life's energy, to do something for, for my kids, for their generation, even for my generation, because we are going to live through that. It's no longer a future generation thing as it was once touted. And so like we went ahead. We had the second kid. We upsized from from the rental that we were living in, into like a small townhouse just north of Toronto. And I was walking with Max, with like my youngest one, and he'd be sleeping in his stroller, and I would pass by like kilometers and kilometers and kilometers and kilometers of houses and garages, and like a lot of them would be open if the weather is nice, and you see all the same stuff in there. Maybe like not all the same, but most things are the same, and it got me thinking, like, so much energy has been used up, and so much pollution has been created by just catering to kind of the individual household, right? So nobody looks at a community and says, what does a community need? We only look at the household, right? And the bigger the household, the better it is for the people selling things to the household. So this is kind of where we are now. Both like just myself geographically and us as a society, that there's a lot, a lot of I would say just waste, right? A lot of waste, like even things that you wouldn't consider as waste, but just having like everyone having the same lawnmower, or like 10 different families on the street having a snowblower. You don't really need that. You wouldn't be sacrificing anything of your life's quality by sharing those things. And that got me thinking into, what if create like a library or a rental service, start rating people, start maybe like creating tokens, like if it was like decentralized or whatnot. By the way, decentralized is another thing I kind of eschewed. Is that the proper pronunciation? Um, and that the reason for that is because the algorithms right now are just not mature enough um, for an efficient computation. So you need to crunch a lot of numbers basically to add two and two together. That's at least my view of it. Maybe an expert would disagree. Now, getting back to this, I was trying to go like in my head, go over, okay, what would the interactions be like, right? When you go ahead and rate your neighbors, when you engage in those like micro e-commerce with someone you live right next door to all the time. And I ended up with the conclusion that it will dehumanize the neighborhood. It will dehumanize the interaction. So, if you give someone 4 stars out of 5 because they were an hour late returning your drill, that would leave like a sour note, kind of, like a sour thing in your relationship. And I like, one of the things that I really don't want to do is to leave, like, like have whatever I do have a negative effect. So I thought, okay, how do I make this actually humanistic, actually human-centered? And this is how I arrived at the current iteration of CloseKnit. Thinking about community, thinking about mutual aid, actually, not engaging in microtransactions, as opposed to just helping each other out and coming together as a community, like for events, for helping each other in different ways.
That definitely sounds like something that we need right now. I mean, so many times, just you end up going and needing something, and the automatic response these days is to go and order it from Amazon or
Hmm.
one of these other big retailers.
That's right.
And especially with the pandemic on right now, you have no idea when you're going to be getting that item if it's shipped to you. You
Oh
don't
yeah.
know if you can go and get it safely from a store. So if you know that there's somebody that you trust and
Hmm.
that you can go and interact with and go and borrows that from them, then it ends up going and saving you money, going and saving you time. It creates less waste. Like I sounds like a win-win all around.
That's right. Well, the only thing that will lose from that is the GDP. You know, because well, you're not actually putting money into the economy, but the quality of life. I believe will increase, and just the security of knowing that you have people to rely on around you. And this is kind of like an evolutionary thing that we had for all of history, and then in the blink of an eye, we don't have that anymore, right? And I'm not saying that necessarily everything is bad. Like I'm not trashing the ability, like to move around the globe, for example. But definitely something was lost, and CloseKnit is an attempt to facilitate something that is similar in that regard.
It's a really good thing that you're doing that. So just kind of bringing up, you have an Indiegogo campaign that's
Hmm.
on at the moment. So what are the funds for the Indiegogo being directed towards?
Right. So the overwhelming majority of funds would go to retaining talent. Um, we're actually like the service that we're creating is non-trivial. There's going to be some technological, I don't know if they're innovations per se, like in the space, but it's definitely cutting edge. We're doing a lot of geospatial. We're playing around with the way that the app itself talks to the server, that it will make it extremely responsive, and it will reduce the bandwidth. And for all those things, you need to retain talent, and you need to retain continuity of talent. And this is something that I think in the software industry has been neglected a little bit. And then people are coming back actually to the idea that a person is not fungible. Like you can't just go ahead and replace one unit of worker with another unit of worker. So so this is really it, right? We want to remain independent. This is why we're there on Indiegogo. We want to remain independent from influences such as investors that will have only profitability in mind. We want to remain independent from influences such as being forced to monetize in ways that are not congruent with our mission and with the promises that we've made. And we want to remain as much as possible, so the goal is 100%, and we'll try to reach for that. But we want to remain as much as possible accountable only to our users and not to anybody else, so that we can have this non-mediated relationship.
What will you do if the funds aren't met? I noted that it's listed as being a flexible goal.
Yeah, that's right. So we had it as a flexible goal because it's not a trial for us per se. It's kind of the beginning of a journey, and the idea is that we really are committed. We really are committed to having this launched and having this um, and for the community to be able to benefit from this. So it's not something that we tried, didn't work out. Okay, now back to other things. We'll try to make it work. We'll use creative ways of funding that are still congruent with our mission. If this does not, if we don't meet our funding goals, if we don't actually, if we don't have that runway, so it can go to like funding of the app, to just funding of ourselves through other activities such as contracting, etc. But obviously, it will put pressures on us, and it will delay the release of the app. And this is what we're trying to avoid. Like we want to have an all-in mentality and a fully dedicated execution.
All right, that sounds reasonable. So it's noted in a number of different areas, and also you brought it up in our conversation, that CloseKnit is driven by 4 different philosophies of circular economies, permaculture, solarpunk, and degrowth. Would you be able to go and explain that a little bit more to me?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually like these are kind of the 4 philosophies that have probably influenced it the most and are most relevant. There's kind of like a cluster around them that is that kind of supports it. However, before I even dive into it, I want to do a small disclaimer that you don't have to ascribe to any of these philosophies to use and benefit CloseKnit. Like, it's not going to turn you into a communist. It's not going to tell you what not to do, right? CloseKnit is about adding another layer to your reality. And if you want to keep on, to keep buying on Amazon, sure, you can keep buying on Amazon. However, you still have that option now, much more than before, to be able to share and to be able to rely on your neighborhood's like mutual aid network. Now, that being said, it is important to acknowledge the philosophical roots, and I'll start with the circular economy because it's probably the most obvious one. So the circular economy comes as a response to the linear economy, which basically says extract, transform, consume, dispose, right? So it just goes from like the earth or Mother Nature or wherever, like whatever you want to call it, into a landfill. There's some like minor ways of mitigating it, like recycling, but if you dig a little bit, you'll see that recycling isn't what we hope that it is. It's much less than that. And so the circular economy just says, hey, what can we do with the resources that we have extracted and transformed before they are completely used up, right? Is there a way to reuse them? Is there a way to not go ahead and extract more before you're done with that? And CloseKnit is built on that, right? It's built on that concept of hey, there's your snowblower, there's your hammer drill. Not every apartment needs a hammer drill. If you have a lot of concrete walls in the building, you don't all of you need a hammer drill to put a picture on once or twice. You can share that. You can not even share it as in this is a common item, but you can request to borrow it, right? And this is, I think, actually an important distinction that maybe some people expressed a reservation of hey, are my tools going to be displayed? Is it going to be like a catalog? Will I have to lend items if I participate in this? And the answer is no, right? It's very soft. It's pull-based, so it's if someone asks, it's up to you if you want to share it. However, it still creates that natural opportunity, right? And that's what we're aiming for right now. We're aiming to create natural opportunities for reuse of resources locally in this trusted network that you know where a person lives. You've seen them like probably 100 times before. Maybe you said hi, maybe you actually know them, maybe you never have, right? But this kind of creates this another layer in your reality where you can engage in this. So this is a very long explanation about where the circular economy comes into play here. Now I want to touch about permaculture, or touch on permaculture. Permaculture is mostly an agrarian philosophy. Like some people would argue with me, but people talk about like plants and like food forests and things like that. However, if you look at the core ethics, they are universal in the sense that what they say is earth care, people care, and fair share. So earth care and people care is exactly what CloseKnit is about. Like it's about caring for the earth by using less resources. It's about caring for people by people, right? There's nobody else but people to care for people. You don't want robots caring for people, and people caring for people, and this it creates this layer where you can do both and you can achieve both. Now, as to fair share, it's a tricky one. We're definitely not arguing for like any sort of like redistribution of resources in CloseKnit. So there's no undertones of that even. The idea is that if someone needs it more, so, for example, if someone was laid off and they can't afford to get something for their house, like a tool that they need for like a repair, or maybe they can't even afford, like a carton of eggs, for example. It's another way to be able to kind of support them. Using the combined resources of the local economy, and like actually not the combined resources. Let me rephrase that. Using the combined goodwill of the local people, and I think that's an important thing. So this is kind of how it, I think, covers, or how it relates to permaculture. Now, Solarpunk is cool. It's really like I discovered it not that long ago, like maybe half a year ago, and I keep coming back to like those like discussions and articles and novels that people are writing. It's like it's really 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 optimistic, and it's optimistic in a way that is not, it's not a techno utopia. So you have like other kinds of like subcultures for like techno utopian thoughts. It's people centered thoughts, and it does not negate technology, but it's not relying on technology as the sole savior of the human race. And it poses a question: how can we use our humanity together with like our creativity, our ingenuity, to solve tomorrow's problems today? And I think it has deeply affected the way that I think about it, and I think it allowed me to maybe dream bolder a little bit, seeing a lot of the imagery and just reading what people say. So it's kind of like on the periphery. However, I think it is a very solar punk thing to do. Just my opinion on it. And I left Degrowth for last. It's quite possibly the most controversial one, and also the one aspect or the one philosophy that contributed the most to my thinking about CloseKnit. Now, to those who don't know, degrowth is a philosophy that says, or not a philosophy, but just kind of like a truth statement, and you can go ahead and say that it's true or not true. Like there's different arguments for it, and against that. The way that we are living now, the way that we are consuming now, is not sustainable in the long term. And one of two things is bound to happen. Either we will keep on doing what we're doing, and then we're going to reach a cliff, and we're going to have a really nasty descent off that cliff, or we acknowledge that truth, or that probability, right? Like it's not an absolute truth. Like you cannot have deductive truth about reality. You can only have inductive truth. So it is a probability. It is, I believe, a very high probability that that what they're saying is actually correct. And plan for that, right? So how do you plan for that? You create a sharing, well, people call it a sharing economy, but like a sharing culture, really, is the deeper way probably of thinking about it. You rely less on your buying power, more on more on your creative power. And actually, I have like first-hand experience in it, or second-hand experience, which is almost like first-hand. My family is from the Soviet Union, and in the Soviet Union, like everyone could fix a car. Everyone knew how to do like pretty much everything, right? And if you didn't, you would go to your neighbor who would. And I'm not saying that the Soviet Union is good. The Soviet Union was a horrible regime that oppressed its people and killed millions just because of what it ended up being. However, what I am saying is that examples are abound, and examples are abound in non-Western countries right now of that kind of ingenuity. And this is something that, yeah, if we have people to turn to, if we have a natural way of doing that, then we can start planning today. And perhaps it's a little, off tune to say, hey, there's an app for that, but it is something, it's a tool. Technology is a tool that is in everybody's hands right now. If it makes it simpler, that's great. We're not intent on keeping all the interactions within the app, or increasing eyeballs on it so that we can show ads or whatnot. So this is another reason why it's subscription based and not like free. So if CloseKnit is a catalyst, that's fantastic, right? Then we have done our job.
That definitely sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this, as towards problems that we're dealing with currently and also into the future. Mm-hmm. I just want to bring up a quick point that I was curious about regarding the safety of users. So what? Mm-hmm. Let's go and say that there's something unfortunate happens, like somebody isn't respectful towards your possessions or something else along those lines. Is there something that is in place to be able to go and help with that?
Mm-hmm. So yes and no, and let me address the yes part first, and then I'll address the no part. So we will have a reporting feature. So for example, if you feel that someone has done something not in good faith, for example, they borrowed something of yours and they broke it, and now they don't want to fix it, or they're falsely claiming that it was broken all along or whatnot, you can report that person. And what that means is basically it gives us the knowledge that somebody thinks this person is a bad actor or has acted in bad faith. And if you have, let's say, more, more than one report, more than two reports, then there are certain measures that we can start taking. We can suspend accounts, we can disable accounts, we can ban people. So that would be in our terms of service. We can warn them before that, right? We can try and, excuse me, we can try and get them. We can try and get them to reconsider their behavior if we're optimistic about human nature. So yeah, so that's what we will have. And the whole idea of safety in CloseKnit is not through mediated interaction. So CloseKnit is not going to be a thick buffer between you and the other person. It's going to be a facilitator between you and the other person. And coming back a little bit from this concept, there's one more thing I do want to share, is that you will not be dealing with people across town, right? You will not be dealing with people whom you're not sure where they live, or they maybe just say they live somewhere and they don't actually, or you haven't seen them, right? Like, you'll only be dealing with people whom you see every single day, which is, which we feel, or I feel, will prevent these kinds of like bad behaviors. They would basically be poisoning their own well, so to speak. Now, to the parts where the answer was no, so we're not intending to, maybe the negative term would be to nanny people. We're not intending to provide a safety cushion in terms of like insurance for like items that were broken or stolen, because like a stolen item is just a something for law enforcement, and maybe we can provide the logs for that for resolution in court. But in general, we're not going to come out and say, we as CloseKnit guarantee your satisfaction, just because you're not actually dealing with CloseKnit, you're dealing with the other person. We are another street that you can come and meet the person at. So this is how we see the application. So there's definitely pluses and minuses there. However, we feel that it is congruent with our mission of actually creating genuine human connections and not mediated connections or watered down connections. And also to provide a measure of safety at the extremes, right? So at the extremes, you wouldn't have a stalker who pretends to live somewhere so they can know where somebody lives, or someone who pretends to live somewhere to steal something and run away with it. So that's the extent that we've positioned ourselves, at least in this space.
Part of the safety measures that are in place are that you have to verify your address with a piece of slow mail, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. So this was a really hard decision to make, and there are ways to go around it, but not at first. So at first, what we're going to do, we're going to send a piece of mail, an envelope to everyone. It will have your uniquely generated secret verification code, and it will have to match like when you get it a few days from signing up. You'll just enter it in your app. It will match what we have in our database, and we'll say, great, this is you. Like, we know, and now not only we know, because we don't care, your neighbors care. So your neighbors know that Lindsay or Victor, who are pretending, or who are saying, not pretending, who are saying they live where they live, actually are there and not elsewhere. And this ties into our into the concept of the circle of trust. Have I spoken about that yet? No?
I don't believe so. If you'd like to share that.
Yes. So this is something that I haven't seen anywhere else. And it will it's basically a radius around your house, and you say that within this radius are the people whom I want to interact with in these, in these like almost, communal, intimate kind of like settings where you are offering help, you are relying on each other. So, for example, someone who is living in a multi-unit apartment building with 20 floors and a few hundred units, you might want to have, or even in a low-rise condo, you might want to just limit your interactions to the people who have the key to the lobby, and that would create another safety net for you. And you can just say, okay, I want to only interact with people who are in my street address. So you can borrow things in the lobby. You can offer help by just meeting in the safe space. However, for people in suburban environments, so this is me right now, and people in maybe like a small town or a rural environment, you would extend your circle, because you can't just rely on like yourself. That would to bring us to square one. So you would say, okay, maybe 100 meters around me or 200 meters around me are the people whom I see every day, or I see every week, right? And that's and this is how you would create that trust. And we're working on being able to adjust that. So, for example, if you feel like like this has been fantastic and you want to like increase your circle of trust, you can do that. Or if you feel like the people at the periphery are just bad people, you don't want to deal with them, then you decrease that and you say, no, like I want to, I want to only be deal with people who are just like really close by. This is something that that we're going to offer. And okay, so for me and you to actually interact on the app, we would have to be in each other's circle. So you can't just forcibly include someone whom like they might not feel feel confident enough to include you in that radius. That's kind of the safety thing.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it definitely sounds like it's a very versatile tool.
Yeah, and we're trying, and it's like it's very difficult to be able to appeal, not appeal, but to be able to solve problems for populations, for people living in a condo and for people living in like out in the country. Like those are completely different lives. However, we do feel that there is a universality in the concept, and we're trying to create a set of features that are common, that will be able to serve everyone well. Perhaps in the future, when we see that there's like really specialized things that are unique to I don't know, people out in the country, or people in like big like high rises, then we will just include that and kind of modify their experience. But we want to start out as a universal tool and as a very flexible and versatile tool, as you said, and see where that leads us. Like see what people are saying.
If somebody was really excited about your app but was hesitant about going and paying for it, what would you say to them?
So we offer a few mechanisms to de-risk people. First of all, we're going with the lowest possible subscription fee that we can. And we're offering basically a subscription. So it won't be like through the Indiegogo, we're offering a 6-month subscription at a reduced price again. So it will cover the snail mail and maybe just like a tiny bit more. But at the very lowest, we're going to offer like a kind of like a 1 month subscription that will just cover the cost of us sending the letter to you, and you being like admitted into the system. Now so imagine, Lindsay, like you're the only one in your neighborhood, nobody else cares about it, nobody else wants it, and you have that subscription and it kind of expires and you've just wasted like $2 for nothing or $3 for nothing. As sad as it may be, like we're actually trying to, so we'll give you the option of, or not the option, let me rephrase, the clock on your subscription will only start counting down as soon as you have somebody else to interact with on the app. So yes, it is hyperlocal. There is like a critical mass and network effect at play, but we won't hold the subscription against you in the case that you're the only one. So you would get to keep it, and then let's say a month from now or 2 months from now, somebody else, like someone on another floor, decides to get it. Only then it will kick in. So you're not losing much. Another mechanism that we're using to de-risk people is we're actually generating a discount code for each person. So what that means for you is that, let's say your discount code is ABCDE, right? And you're saying, and in the mail you're going to have like a little pamphlet that you can put in the community board saying, "Hi, I'm CloseKnit. And this is like all the things that we can do together. And if you sign up with this discount code, you'll get a month free. So you'll also get a month free. And we're not, like at first I had the idea of like just making it unlimited, but then it's not really, I don't think it's really fair for like all people. So we're limiting it to 12 months right now. Mm-hmm. So basically you'll be able to get 12, like a year's worth of subscription if 12 people sign up using your discount code. So this is again something to kind of de-risk you and give you a little bit of a boost, just because you were one of the first users or the first user in your neighborhood.
Awesome. Yeah, I can definitely see that as making somebody a lot more comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. And definitely also going and counteracting what would happen if somebody wasn't living in as densely populated area as like Toronto.
Right. So with like density of population, we have this idea of a circle of trust. And the circle of trust is something that you can control. So let's say you live in an apartment building with like 300 other units, and each unit has like 2 or 3 people on average. Then you might want to limit your circle of trust just to your street address, and only interact with the people who also have the key to your lobby. So that's another way to kind of increase trust, right? So you would meet with a person for a swap, like in the lobby, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just something that is, I think, more or less unique to apartment and condo buildings. And as you get to like more like suburban style and rural style neighborhoods, you can choose to increase your circle of trust to, let's say, 100 meters or 150 meters. So here it would include, like where we live right now, it would include maybe 100, 200 more houses. In a rural setting, you would increase it more, right? Because you always need to drive to your neighbor, but you should still be able to to talk to them, to know them, right, and be able to rely on some mutual help. Even if like both of you aren't the most talkative people and go to the local drinking hole or wherever it is. So that kind of I think addresses the gap or just the differences between the different demographics and the different places where CloseKnit can be used.
Mm-hmm. That makes it very versatile.
Yeah, well, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to address different demographics, and it's a challenge to address the like all of the like life situations that may arise. And for example, we had a design session yesterday about events, and one of the ideas was like, hey, let's have like a date and then a time of an event, right? However, that would preclude people from having a multi-day event, and we don't want to tell people how to use the app, right? We want them to kind of figure it out on their own and have something and have like options to or the flexibility rather to adapt it to their own environment. And this is also like a permaculture kind of principle that you don't have like a one-size-fits-all solution. You look into your own local setting for for inspiration and for solutions.
Exactly. Yeah, because there's so many different situations out there. There's so many different people out there in terms of how they're interacting and their living situations and close quarters and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, and I could see that is working really well to being able to adapt to all those different things. So, with where the app is in the current moment, is it completed or is it still in the design phase or is active development?
So I was talking like prior to launching the campaign, and just like when I was just ideating, I was talking to a friend of mine who's very active in the startup scene and has seen like successes and failures, and he gave me wise advice that I then went ahead and disregarded. His wise advice was not to invest too much before your crowdfunding campaign is done. And that was to kind of like test the grounds, see where people are at, and just in general be able to I guess cut your losses in case of like a negative scenario. But the more I thought about it, the more I talked to people, the more I saw like the enthusiasm that other people have, and I was like, screw it. Let's just go all in and see where it's at. And so basically, I went ahead and I hired the services of a really great developer. I hired this, so he's doing work full time right now. And I hired the services of a really great UI and UX designer. She's part-time with us. And the idea is to keep the team and to iterate. So like right now, I'm mostly focused on the campaign, but we have a part of the app that's actually done already. And we're designing a lot of new functionality and new screens, and creating the the CSS for it, and creating kind of like the technological framework for it. So like this allows me to kind of go ahead and say that we're going to launch before the end of summer, because otherwise the campaign ends in June, like mid to like towards the end of June, and then if I were to start only then, it would take us like past September, probably for version 1, and now we're actually racing to version 1 as much as we can.
So it would be released by, say, end of summer. That's your goal that you're aiming for?
So, I actually posted the timeline, the proposed timeline that we're currently based off of. We're aiming, and this is an aggressive goal, but we're trying to make the best use of like the resources and the technologies that we chose, and we chose them specifically for that as well, like for rapid development. So we're aiming for beginning of July to start piloting, possibly mid-July the latest end of July for a Canadian release. We're going to see how well it performs. We're going to kind of like, it's going to flush out maybe some early bugs that we missed in the pilot and that we missed in our testing. And then we're going more aggressive towards like the English-speaking world. So starting either with the US or the UK. There's a lot of interest in the UK, so I'm actually really keen on just launching there, right, and seeing how people react. So yeah, and then afterwards we'll start the internationalization work. So basically, we'll take everything and we will put them in like internationalized files, like all the assets, and hire translators to do the work for us, so that we can launch like, let's say, in Spanish or Portuguese or Russian or like Arabic, wherever.
Sorry, I just had somebody pop up here.
That's fine.
Could you help me out?
Sure.
Thank you.
Here, Scotty.
Sorry, it's my dog. She usually wants to try and sit up here. So, but yeah, no, it sounds like you're really you've got every step planned out here from the sounds of it, which I think is fantastic. I actually have a question for you from my my tech guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was wondering if you're planning on ever eventually making it open source, so and move the philosophies into also the development section of it.
So not only that, we're actually thinking actively about like the structure of the organization and the governance and just the goals of it. So let me answer your question first, and then I can answer my own question. So yes, we want to make it open source. I think, and I've had this conversation with a few people, just from my own experience as like a software engineer. When you're racing towards something, you're bound to like not be as meticulous as when you're doing like maybe like the first or second look back and closing all the gaps. So just from the point of view of our users, it will be safer for them if we came back to open sourcing it maybe a couple of iterations later. And we are actually planning to do that. And it's not because, you know, we're going to leave like big gaps and just move fast and break things, as someone famously said. We're going to be very, very meticulous and security oriented. However, I still don't feel comfortable releasing the code base immediately. I would like it to be subjected to like an actual security review by a security professional, and that's like a specialization within software engineering. So as much as I have worked with security before, and as much as you know, as my colleague has worked with security, we want that opinion and that review to go in first, so that our users are actually more secure. And then when we release it to the open source community, then all of the, you know, like the floodgates will open, and a lot of the benefits can pour in. Now, to kind of go beyond that, right? Because open source is something that it's good, but it could be a false premise also, or a false promise even. So imagine that the app is open source. However, who is to say that we don't have a closed source machine learning algorithm that crunches the data, that you know, operates in parallel to that, like even if we're like completely truthful. So this is where the end user license agreement and the terms of service come into play, and this is just like a legal thing that will bind us to our promises. And we're also looking into possibly transition into a nonprofit sometime in the future. The reason that we haven't started with it is actually it's not conceptual, or it's not philosophical. It was purely practical. It's just much faster to start with a corporation, and we had one. We had my corporation to start with, and it's just easier to go this way. And down the line, we can sit down and actually put in the work to put proper governance and transition it into a non-profit. So this is not guaranteed. So this is why we're not putting it everywhere. But it's just a thought that keeps coming back.
Well, I think that covers pretty much all the questions that I had. Is there anything else that you'd like to go and add before we finish up?
Yeah. I want to add, whoever's going to be reading or listening to this, that right now it's actually, as bad of a time as it is a pivotal moment, or it can be a pivotal moment. And I think a lot of the potential energy for projects like this, for projects that are humanistic, that are not based on the surveillance economy or the attention economy or any of the VC-backed kind of ideas, right now is probably the best time that I've seen in my career to go ahead and launch them. So use that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting times that we live in, and it's going to be very interesting seeing how the future holds. And probably one of the few ways that we're going to actually be able to get this is through cooperation as a community. So thank you for going and bringing this app about. And I honestly think this is something that we all really need right now. And thank you for your time, and thank you for going and speaking with me. And I hope that you have a great day.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you very much for your time and for your interest, and have a fantastic day as well.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you for watching, and we hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to learn more about the Solarpunk scene and CloseKnit, check out the links below. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have a project that you've been working on that you would like to be featured on our channel, please feel free to contact us. We hope that you have a great day.